Hey folks, Eddie from Totally Wired Guitars here with the Connoisseur's Guide to Tort. And by Tort, I mean tortoiseshell pickguards. So if you are a huge nerd like me and have spent many a sleepless night doom scrolling through Reverb or eBay, Instagram, and maybe even just Google image search, taking a look at 60s Fenders and admiring that god-tier vintage Tort that you find on those guitars, you might be thinking to yourself, damn, there's no way in hell I am going to be spending $400, $500, $600 on a vintage guard to bring that mojo to your own guitar. Well, the good news is it is 2025 and there are a number of amazing options out there for you from custom pickguard makers all over the world who are bringing this awesome look back. But before I show you some killer examples and get into specifics on how to get yourself one of these modern vintage style recreations, I just wanted to take a look at Fender's Tort guards over the years from their introduction back in 1959 all the way to the modern day. So Fender introduced their faux tortoiseshell pickguards back in 1959 with some of their earliest examples showing up on their newly released Fender Jazzmaster. These pickguards were made of a material called celluloid nitrate. Now, each tortoiseshell pickguard that Fender made had its own unique pattern, and you can see variations of these over the years, with some of them looking more like a almost like friggin' pepperoni, like this one on this 1962 Jazzmaster, to having more hazy swirls such as the 1963 Jaguar pickguard that I put here on my 1965 Jag. Now, Fender by the mid-60s had realized that this organic celluloid nitrate material was prone to things like warping and cracking over time, on top of actually being incredibly toxic and highly flammable. And so by 1965, Fender had switched over to using more stable plastics like ABS or PVC. And as a result, you can see on this 1965 Jazzmaster that they weren't as prone to the warping or cracking. And on top of that, celluloid releases highly corrosive gases as it ages, which damage the finish as well as hardware that surrounds it. And so you do not see as much of that on the mid-60s and later. Now, I will take this time to tell you that if you do have a vintage guitar and for whatever reason you decide to switch out the vintage tortoiseshell, yes, they are very, very prone to shrinking. And so the best method for storing that vintage Tort is to actually mount it on a piece of wood like I have here, and I actually added the pickup covers as well as the switch plate so that those openings wouldn't shrink and you would then be unable to push your pickups or plate through. Now, the look of Fender's tortoiseshell pickguards continued to evolve through the rest of the 60s. And as time went on, especially into the later 60s, the look of these guards became darker. The patterns became a little bit more busy looking, still blurry, but definitely very different from the earlier to mid 60s pickguards. And they would remain that way until Fender discontinued the use of tortoiseshell pickguards altogether in the 1970s. Now, because this is an offset guitar channel, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that by the late 70s, Fender had completely discontinued the Jazzmaster and the Jaguar, and it wouldn't be until Fender Japan started to reissue the Jazzmaster that we would see offsets with Tort again. Now, Fender Japan had gone with a completely different approach to doing Tort, with their most infamous examples being their Ketchup guard era, in which they had used basically a laminate, like a printed tortoiseshell pattern on top of the plastic guards that they were producing. And they undoubtedly have an iconic and treasured look all their own. Now, from the mid-2000s or so, Fender Japan had switched it up and started to change the look of those guards from that cartoonish ketchup bright red to a more subdued kind of look, as you can see here on this 2016 made in Japan Jazzmaster. And if you look very, very closely, you will see some of the pixels in this guard, and you can see that this is not indeed celluloid and instead just a print. Meanwhile, Fender USA would finally reissue Jazzmasters and Jaguars in 1999, and the Tort pickguards that came on those earliest examples of the American Vintage 62 line had this really dark, almost reddish black kind of color to them. They had red spots that were blurry, and they looked quite nice even if they didn't look like the vintage examples. And by the mid to late 2000s, Fender would switch to the guards that, many of us are most familiar with on modern Fender guitars. This is an okay looking example of one. I had bought this back in 2009, and this is an American Vintage reissue 62 guard. As you can see, it's reddish brown. It's very, very busy, right? And you can see the little swirls are a lot sharper than on the vintage examples. And these are, I don't know, not the best. And hilariously, Fender came out with even uglier versions of this guard with just really, really awful looking sharp yellow streaks in them that I would kind of cringe every time I saw on anything from their American Vintage series, even on their custom shop guitars. And yeah, unfortunately, if you are looking to buy something just off of the shelf for not very much money, this here is about as good as it's gonna get. Moving into the 2010s, Fender switched up the Tort guard formula again, and these can be seen on your American Vintage 65 models as well as your Vintera and Classic Vibe models. And you can see, at least in my opinion, that they switched to something that was a lot darker, blurrier, a bit more tasteful than those ugly brown and yellow speckled guards that they were making in the 2000s. Now, this is the look of the guards that you will find coming stock on Fender guitars, and sometimes will find used in the aftermarket. And to me, not bad. Not bad. Now, if you spent any time on forums like offsetguitars.com back in the later 2000s, you'll know that many folks in the community would often gripe about the unfortunate Tort options available at that time. But in the early 2010s, the Tort game would forever change when Mark founded Spitfire Pickguards. They were, at the time, the most vintage accurate modern reproductions that could be bought. Now, he's never come out and told anyone, obviously, his secret recipe as to how he started to reverse engineer these vintage style guards, but Mark at Spitfire offers a number of different variations. This here, I believe, is his vintage bright red faded orange mix. It's got a three-dimensional quality to it that is just gorgeous to look at, especially when you hold it at different angles in the light. And he has so many different options based on everything from different eras of Fender Tort to completely new imaginations using this kind of material. Now, hold on to your butts, or should I say your purses and wallets, because Spitfire Pickguards, for something handmade and bespoke and made specifically to your taste in Tort, you are going to have to pay a pretty penny. With his vintage style Tort guards starting at $300. You can get them relict for an additional $65, with other upcharges available for things like warping if you are restoring a vintage Jazzmaster or Jaguar or whatever kind of guitar, he makes a number of different pick guards for all the models that you can think of. And $300, $400, that sounds like an insane amount of money to pay for a pick guard, right? But I've got to say, after actually pulling the trigger on one of Mark's earliest guards back, I believe that was probably like 2011 or 2012, the mojo that it brought to my Jaguar at the time was just absolutely insane. I could not tell the difference between Mark's guard and the pre-CBS guards that I had on my various Jaguars and Jazzmasters, you know, before I had to unfortunately sell them. And so Mark was a godsend for the offset community and has been featured on very well-known guitars. One of the most well-known Spitfire guards that you have probably seen is on Nels Klein's 1959 Jazzmaster, and it just looks absolutely gorgeous on that one. But now, Spitfire is not the only game in town. Thankfully, like Mark from Spitfire, other folks in the guitar community decided to try to do their own vintage style recreations of Fender's iconic pickguards. And here I have got a beautiful example made by John over at Pickford Guards. This is one of his Kevin Shields replica pickguards, and you can just see the beautiful little details that he's got here. Like Spitfire, he's also got the nice wide bevel that is vintage accurate for the Fender 60s style guards. And there are a number of awesome things I can mention about Pickford Guards. Firstly, they are among the most affordable bespoke custom vintage style guard options that you can get, ranging from $100 to about $150, depending on the options that you choose. And the other thing is that he actually makes replica guards of iconic guitars, or you can even send him pictures for guards that he can then take inspiration from to create your guard. One of the most well-known replica guards that John at Pickford Guards makes is the Ketchup red Tort that was featured on Kurt Cobain's Mustang. It's an almost 1-1 recreation. I don't know how he replicates them, but they are really awesome looking guards and relatively affordable to boot. Another S-tier vintage style Tort maker is Paul over at Lavaguards UK. He made this gorgeous early to mid 60s style Jazzmaster pickguard, which I put here on my wife Amanda's custom built burgundy Miss metallic Jazzmaster that she's been rocking for the past 15 plus years. Now, I had always thought that the guitar that I built for her was a really visually stunning guitar, but this is the thing. This Lavaguards pickguard is the thing that really took it to the place that I always dreamed that it could, giving it that vintage mojo that it was just begging for. And it was the perfect match for all of the natural wear that she has put on this guitar, from playing hundreds of shows, a number of tours and recording sessions, and just writing and playing this thing at home. And wow, I mean, it is a stunner. Now, for me, Paul makes some of the most accurate looking vintage style Tort guards. They've got that hazy, blurry, lava-like pattern. And like the other makers that I've mentioned, he can take inspiration from specific guards that you are looking at. And he also routinely puts ones available for sale up on his website. Now, for me, especially with how gorgeous his guards are, the pricing on it for me is pretty fair. They usually go for about 150 British pounds, which translates to about $200. And yeah, I mean, goodness gracious, I cannot sing his praises enough, because the guards that he makes are just frigging beauties. And last but certainly not least, you may have seen this on my social media account. It is my custom charcoal frost metallic American Vintage 266 Jazzmaster. And this one here, this god tier Tort, has been made by Francois over at Avantguard in France. And my goodness, this was jaw-dropping when I first got it in. The details that he was able to get when I had ordered this pre-CBS style guard is just unbelievable to me. It has got all of that wonderful, blurry, vintage style goodness with just the right amount of dark and also lighter yellowish orange speckles. And it really, really does remind me of like maybe 62, 63 style tortoiseshell guards that I have seen in person. He's also got the wide beveled edge with a really, really thin center black line. And boy, oh boy, I mean, this guitar had a mint guard on it before, or eggshell white, whatever it was that came stock on these guitars. And when I put this Avantguard tortoiseshell pickguard on, it just really made the guitar pop for me. And I know it's so silly to say, but seeing the guard on this just inspires me to pick up this guitar a lot. I don't know why. I know maybe it doesn't make sense, but I guess as an appreciator of aesthetics, it just inspires that in me. It inspires me to pick this up over some of the other newer Jazzmasters that I've had. And I know I am a huge dweeb for saying this, but I probably spend almost as much time looking at this or looking at myself playing it in the mirror and admiring it as I do actually playing it. And yeah, that's just what it inspires in me. Now Avantgarde's prices are about in line with Spitfires. I think this one, after all is said and done, cost me about $300. While it is a crazy amount of money to pay for a pickguard, you can't really put a cost on one's happiness and satisfaction. And if it makes the instrument more inspirational to play, look at, whatever, then whatever it is that you can afford to achieve that dream, so to speak, is not money wasted, at least as far as I'm concerned. Now, one final thing that I did want to mention that I'd be remiss if I didn't say is that each and every one of these guards, regardless of who is making them, undergoes a chemical process, their own unique formulas per maker. And in a lot of cases, these are not processes that are 100% predictable. And so even if you are looking up certain styles, so for example, on Spitfires, he's got a number of different styles, and same with the other pickguard makers. That does not mean that he's going to be able to recreate exactly what you see in the picture. Each and every single guard maker is going to do their best to achieve the look that you are going for, but you also do need to temper expectations and leave a little bit to chance and randomness. Make sure that you read over the terms and conditions, if any are provided, or on their websites, because if in some instances you are not happy with the outcome of the final guard or whatever, there are sometimes applicable restocking fees, and sometimes they can be quite high. So definitely ask questions. And if you are looking for something specific, the better that you communicate those, whether through your correspondence or through picture references, the better of an idea the guard maker has of what it is that you are going for. And again, they're not going to be able to replicate your reference pictures 100%, but they will do their best to try to get in the ballpark. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, one of the ones that I unfortunately did not have an example on hand, but I have seen some beautiful guards from that deserves an honorable mention is Reptile Guards. He also makes beautiful vintage style recreations for your favorite type of guitars. I don't know too much more information about him aside from that. So if you are interested, definitely look him up. And a number of other honorable mentions. Decoboom makes this Mars Red style Tort guard, which is relatively inexpensive. I think it's around maybe like $50 to $80 from them. It is using supposedly genuine celluloid, the same kind of stuff that WD Pickguards uses for their custom cut guards. Just a couple of other honorable mentions. You can take a look over on Reverb and eBay. There are a number of folks who are doing aged vintage style guards using supposedly actual celluloid nitrate. So this one was from a company called Fender Parts, I believe, on eBay. You can see it's got a nice, vibrant reddish kind of brown color to it. He's done some aging, and it's got the nice aged wide bevel. I believe this guard cost me about $80 or so on eBay. There's also Portland Music, who does very, very similar guards to this, as well as Gary G on Reverb, who I probably the most expensive of the three that I just mentioned, with his guards going for almost $150. And so definitely check those out because you might find something that is to your liking and within your budget. But I know I'm crazy for advocating spending this much money. I mean, you could get a Squier, a whole guitar, for the price of one of these crazy ass pick guards. But I don't know. As I said to you before, aesthetics to me matter, whether you are putting it on a custom build or just sprucing up your own stock guitar, or maybe you are doing some kind of restoration and the pick guard is the last thing that you have to get, and you don't feel like spending, I'm seeing vintage guards that you don't know are going to fit. They might be cracked. They might need some opening up of the routes for the pickups or for the control cavity, like on Jaguars. And yeah, there are folks that are asking crazy money for those vintage guards. You can regularly find things like vintage Jaguar guards and stuff like this for around, the $400 mark is what I'm seeing folks asking. But some folks who are selling them are asking insane, like, $1,000 and up for vintage guards, which is, I guess, based on the current market prices for vintage guitars, I guess makes sense, but I don't know. I couldn't do it. But then again, I never thought that I would be spending $300 on a dang pick guard. But there it is. What do you think? Am I crazy? Are people who buy these kinds of Tort guards crazy? Or do you see it? Do you see the value in it? For me, I definitely do. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments. As always, if you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell to be notified of new videos as soon as they drop. And don't forget to follow Totally Wired Guitars for more offset guitars modding tips.